Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating and honestly incredibly relatable topic: how modern witchcraft approaches the totally universal human desire to protect your peace and just keep negative energy at bay. Because whether we're talking about a toxic workplace, a difficult ex, or just a general sense of heavy, weird energy hanging around, humanity has literally always looked for ways to shield themselves. So, we're going to explore the structured, magical methods that practitioners actually use to neutralize all that negativity. Let's get right into it.
So, let's kick things off with a pretty fundamental question. How exactly do people magically protect their personal boundaries? I mean, we all have completely mundane ways of doing this every single day, right? We block a phone number, we set a strict out-of-office email, or we just physically walk away from a draining conversation. But in the realm of spellcraft, practitioners take a much more intentional, highly energetic approach to safeguarding their personal space. To really wrap our heads around these practices, we've got to look at our baseline, which is a concept called apotropaic magic. Basically, this is the historical and ongoing practice of actively warding off evil or deflecting harmful spiritual influences. And you guys, this isn't just some modern internet trend. Humans have been practicing apotropaic magic for thousands of years, using rituals, special charms, and even just shiny objects to build an energetic barrier between themselves and whatever is wishing them harm.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to look at the need for protection, dive into mirror magic and deflection, unpack the mirror ethics debate, see how binding restricts harmful energy, explore the ancient roots of binding, and finally, talk about disposing of spell remains. Starting off with Section 1, the need for protection and shielding from negative energy. You know, before anyone even thinks about casting a spell, they really have to identify exactly what they're trying to keep out. It's the energetic equivalent of double-checking the locks on your front door before you go to sleep. You have to ask yourself, do you want to deflect the energy, basically bouncing those unwanted vibes right back to whoever sent them? Or do you want to restrict the energy, halting it, tying it up, and stopping it dead in its tracks so it just can't move at all? These are two vastly different approaches, and they come with completely different tools and ethical considerations. Which brings us to Section 2, mirror magic and deflection, or bouncing bad vibes back.
Mirrors have this massive history as tools of truth, but in protection magic, their job is highly literal. Enter the mirror protection spell. This is a super traditional method designed to deflect any ill will or harm sent your way, bouncing that negativity directly back to its source. The items you need are wonderfully simple. Just a small handheld mirror, a white candle, and a fireproof dish. The practitioner places the mirror flat on their table facing upward and sets the unlit white candle right on top of it. Then, they light the candle and vividly visualize a literal shield of white light reflecting away all forms of harm. Let that candle burn down safely and the spell is cast. It is such an elegant, highly visual way to essentially say, return to sender.
Now on to Section 3, the mirror ethics debate and karmic fallout in the community.
Now you might be wondering, is everyone cool with just aggressively bouncing energy back? Well, no. Sending energy back actually isn't universally accepted at all. On one side, proponents of mirror magic argue that it is simply instant karma. Their logic is, hey, they're only getting what they sent, so they're only getting what they deserve. It's pure justice. But on the flip side, critics heavily warn of karmic backlash. They point to the law of three, which is this core belief that whatever energy you consciously send out into the world is going to return to you threefold. So by choosing to bounce harm back, you're making a conscious choice to send negative energy yourself, which could absolutely end up harming you in the long run.
And that leads us to this absolutely fascinating psychological concept used in these communities: the unintentional stream of energy. Opponents of mirror magic make a really good point. Someone might unconsciously direct anger your way without any true malice. Imagine an ex-partner just stomping around their living room after a messy breakup, completely full of rage. That frantic pacing can unintentionally raise energy, which is sometimes called a cone of power, and direct it right at you. If you use a mirror spell to violently bounce that back, you might be unfairly punishing someone who never consciously intended to cause you actual harm. They were just having a really bad day.
Moving to Section 4, binding restricts harmful energy, stopping harm without deflecting.
To totally bypass that potential karmic fallout, tons of practitioners pivot to a method that restricts rather than deflects. Enter the general binding petition. In spellcraft, a binding spell restricts an entity from taking specific actions, like doing harm, without actually attacking them back. For this, you just need a small piece of paper, some black thread or cord, and a glass jar with a lid. The process is incredibly tactile. First, you write your intention down. Something like, I bind you from causing harm to me or anyone else. You fold that paper up
and then you start wrapping the black cord tightly around it. And the key here is that while you wrap, you actively visualize the restriction of their harmful energy. Finally, you pop it into the glass jar and seal it shut to literally lock the binding in place.
Which perfectly cues up Section 5, Ancient Roots of Binding, from curse tablets to witch bottles.
While we definitely see spell jars all over our social media feeds today, these practices are firmly grounded in some incredibly ancient traditions. Just look at this translation from an actual Greco-Roman curse tablet found in Bath, England. Back then, people would literally take thin sheets of lead, scratch their binding intentions into them in tiny letters, often pierce them with nails, and bury them in the dirt. And the drama in these is just unmatched. May he who carried off Vilbia from me become liquid as the water. It just goes to show you the human urge to bind people who wrong us is truly ancient.
Fast forward a bit to medieval English folk magic, and we find the famously protective witch bottle. These were literal glass bottles, buried near doorways, specifically to snag and trap evil spirits targeting a property. And the ingredients? Quite shocking. They used sharp pins, rusty nails, broken glass, human hair, and yes, urine. The working theory was that the bodily fluids tied the bottle directly to the victim, while the sharp objects physically tangled and trapped the incoming negative spirit. Historical magic was definitely less about aesthetics and way more about raw, visceral protection.
Let's look at Section 6, Disposing of Spell Remains and Finalizing the Energetic Boundary. Okay, so you've locked the negativity in a jar, or your protective candle finally burned out. What happens next? Well, disposing of spell remains is an absolutely essential part of completing the magical process. If your spell was all about banishing energy, you can't exactly just chuck the remnants in your kitchen trash can. Practitioners might scatter ashes in flowing water, so it carries the energy away. They might leave a sealed packet at a crossroads and walk away without looking back to scatter the energy in all directions. Or, for the most heavy-duty banishings in traditions like hoodoo, they might even respectfully bury the items in a graveyard. So why does all this disposal matter so much? Because practitioners believe that thoughtfully handling these physical leftovers is what finally seals the energetic boundary. Think of it like taking out the emotional garbage. If you don't properly get rid of the remnants of a binding spell, that restricted negativity might literally just hang around your altar or your bedroom, creating this pool of stagnant energy. Proper disposal is what ensures the job is 100% finished.
As we wrap up this explainer, we've seen how centuries of intense tradition have shaped the exact ways people try to shield themselves from harm and tie up the negativity in their lives. But honestly, it leaves us with such a fascinating final question to chew on. Regardless of whether you use spell jars, mirror reflections, or just really clear mundane communication, how do you set your own boundaries? What specific methods do you use to neutralize negativity and protect your own peace? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and definitely keep questioning the amazing ways we navigate the world.